What was something fairly small that made you feel betrayed by your so? The most extreme case I know of is my dad and the girlfriend he had before my mom came along. He and the GF were high school sweethearts and had been together for 3 years. They were both dying to see Back to the Future 2, a movie that had been highly anticipated for years. He had a family emergency the day it came out, so they agreed to see it the following Monday. He found out from friends she went to see it with a douchey guy friend my dad never really liked. He was so hurt, and she was so unapologetic. Her attitude was, "I'll go see it with you too. Why did I have to wait?" Even though they'd agreed to see it together, he told her they needed to take a break. He fully meant for it to be temporary, just until he cooled off, but then he met my mom when he went to see the movie by himself, and he never looked back. He does feel a bit guilty though, because his ex was pretty devastated when she found out he'd met someone else and wanted to end things for good. My husband and friends finally talked me into taking a break and going on a hiking weekend with the girls during a long, busy stretch of working overtime, and being caregiver to my mom in long-term care, and my aunt in palliative care. I went, but touched base with my husband briefly each of the 3 days. I even talked to him the last day to say that we were considering an extra hike that would make us late coming home. Several hours after I got home late and was in bed, around 11 p.m., he thought to tell me that my aunt's doctor had phoned just after I had left on the Friday, to say the end was near. I was stunned that he hadn't told me earlier. I would have come home, or at least called the doctor. Because it was so late, and I knew there would only be one staff on the floor, I decided to wait and call in the morning. Yes, she died before then. Sure, he just forgot to tell me about a call, but after 94 years on this earth, my aunt died alone. I'll often make fun of myself for the sake of making my wife laugh. We have this running joke that I'm a girly man because I cry during movies and I enjoy musicals, etc. It's all fun and games when we joke about this at home, but one time we were out with her friends and she referred to me as a princess in front of them. Maybe I'm being insecure. It's never a problem when we joke at home, but for some reason it felt insulting in front of her friends. I laughed it off in the moment, but I pulled her aside later and told her I didn't appreciate being made fun of publicly like that. I guess it's because I felt this was our little inside joke and I was being vulnerable for the sake of making her laugh, but when everyone is in on the joke it feels like I'm not making people laugh anymore, they're just laughing at me. When I was married about 5 years in and far from home, I got to work and my car battery died. I called my husband at the time because I needed help. I needed help because I had no idea how to replace the battery and needed a ride to go buy a new one. It still confuses me to this day. He said I'm off work but I'm heading out to go hunting. Go have your work friends help you, and he refused to come help me. I never felt so alone and worthless. Like if my mom called my dad, he'd be there in minutes. If I was home, I could have called buddies in different counties even, and they'd be there to help me. But he absolutely refused to come help. It was the beginning of the time where if I had any self-esteem, I should have clearly seen the signs of continued cruelty and divorced him. When I was going through an extremely difficult and complex pregnancy with our twins, I had serious orange juice cravings. But I also had gestational dyspepsia, heartburn so bad it was medicated, and Hyoeremesis gravidarum. So I rationed it, which was seriously hard to make myself do, and allowed myself a single serving a day. I was also starving, but my babies had crushed all my organs so I could barely fit anything in my stomach. I was losing weight and starting to have feelings of what I can only describe as primal food guarding. One day I woke up and found the orange juice carton in the bin. He had drank the last of it. I was too little to get to the shop and he was out at work all day. I phoned him, literally sobbed screaming, "How could you?" I've genuinely never felt such deep emotional betrayal before or since. I cannot explain it. Hormones, medical difficulties, and growing two people seriously messes with you. I had been telling my BF for months, years, that my absolute dream date was going stargazing. More than anything, I wanted to go out and see the stars at a night sky preservation area. We'd go out to the marina near us with a buddy and I'd beg said buddy to let us stay a few minutes more so I could look at the sky a little longer. It got to the point that my family and friends joked that I should be an astronaut because I loved looking at the constellations so much. One of my dream jobs is to teach astronomy at a school. I'm studying to be a teacher. BF was asked what my dream date was by a close friend of ours. He said something along the lines of a picnic in the morning and walking around. No, man. That's not my dream date. That's just something I might do in my spare time, and even then it's still kinda boring. I'm still hurt when I think about that TBH. No idea how he just didn't listen for years on that. After the birth of my first child, she had a round of colic for 2 weeks and my ex and I were alternating the night shift. I would take care of her during the days and every other night he would do the night feedings. One time I was up from 5 a.m. until 5 p.m. the next day. So like I had a crying baby for 36 hours with no sleep, and I hadn't eaten much all day. I was so exhausted and frustrated with the crying and I asked my ex to go get us pizza. The pizza place was 5 minutes away so I expected him to be back in like 20 minutes, and then I was looking forward to sleeping like the dead after that. He didn't return for like over an hour so I called him like WTFFFFF. And he had eaten his portions of the pizza there at the shop and then drove over to his friend's house and was hanging out with him for a few minutes before his night shift with a baby, aka probably doing coke that I didn't know about. It was so inconsiderate and really set the pace for the rest of our relationship. It went just like that for 5 years until I finally dumped his loser ass. This happened years ago but I never forgot it. My so and I had season passes to Disneyland. I am 120 pounds and my body does not regulate temperature well. If I get cold enough, my lips turn blue and my fingers start feeling like pins and needles. After spending the day there, that night it had gotten really cold and I wasn't expecting it so I did not bring a sweater. I asked him if I could buy one. Of course they were expensive and he said he wasn't going to pay that much for a sweater. So I was freezing the rest of the night, especially on the tram back to the car. By the time we got to the car I was shivering pretty violently. I was also in sandals. A couple months later and it is colder and he forgets his jacket. He goes in and buys one. He is a lot bigger than me and almost never gets cold. He can deal with the cold though and it takes him a lot to get that cold. As he walked out and put on his sweater, he did not see that I was trying not to cry. I felt so betrayed. He knew how cold I had been and my problem with temperature, but because he wasn't cold, he assumed I was just being dramatic, I guess. My most recent birthday was a disaster. My husband and I had been trying to get our relationship back on track after his cheating, among other things. I'm not big on birthdays, but I told him that there was something specific that I wanted that year. There was a local bakery that I frequented as a kid that closed when I was in high school. The owners reopened the bakery about 10 years after the original closed. I was so happy. I called them to ask if they still made a particular type of cupcake that I bought all the time as a kid. They did. So, I told my husband that is what I wanted for my birthday. A dozen of those cupcakes. That is the only thing I asked for. The day before my birthday I asked him when would the cupcakes need to be picked up. He looked at me like I had two heads. He forgot. I called the bakery right then and ordered the cupcakes, but couldn't pick them up until a few days after my birthday because it was a custom order that they needed time on. I picked them up and paid for them myself. Most disappointing birthday ever, and I've had some doozies. I asked for so little.